Hello, welcome to Identity Leathercraft. For this session we're going to look at how to design an apron and what leathers work best for aprons. So an apron's a great project to make. It's a good leathercraft project. You have to do a bit of stitching, a bit of riveting if you want to, working with the leather, cutting the leather. So it's a really good project to do. They're really practical as well, can be used for lots of different purposes. So for general craft, for painting, for gardening, for bar work, barbecues, bushcraft, spoon carving, hairdressers, lots of different uses, and maybe the use will depend on the style as well that you'll do. We do have a Pinterest board where we put together a lot of different illustrations of different types of apron, which might help you get your inspiration for your design. So for example, you might want to do a half apron. So a half apron works really well for gardening, for crafts and tools, and we particularly use ours when we're doing stalls at events and things. So we've got a little pocket I've put in here for a pen, for my invoice book and receipt book, and I've got a little couple of clips here, and I usually clip my pass for the event, getting in and out onto there, and anything else that could be handy. But you can see there that this is made with the soft calf leather and worked out with pockets. I've added rivets and stitching, and I've also used some areas where I've reinforced the leather with some of the lightweight veg tan calf leathers, just to give a little bit of strength on the tops of the pockets and there. So that's the half apron size that you might decide to use. It's a little bit more of a simpler pattern, good one to start with. It may depend on what you want to use. So we've also got this bib style apron. So this is more of the traditional kind of style, but even with these bib aprons there are ways that you can tweak them and wear them. So if you take a close look at Jay on the repair shop, he's got kind of some extra detailing in the way that his apron's been done. It's kind of worth having a look at that one. It's really up to you about where you put your pockets, where you position things, and how you design. So this leather has the pocket on the centre, this apron, and it's quite a big coverage, so it's going to give quite a good wrap around the sides. So again, thinking about where you need protection and that kind of thing. So that's the bib style apron, and that's the one I'm going to work on how to make the pattern up with you. You will also see, particularly in Japan, they have aprons which are more like, they come right around the sides, fold over and kind of cross through, and they give quite a good protection, and they're really good if you're a painter or if you're doing something where you really want to protect a lot more of your clothing. So they're worth a look at as well, and they would work really well in a lighter weight leather, something like a lambskin clothing leather, sheepskin nappa. Many of these aprons work well in upholstery leather. So again, if you're taking apart an old sofa or anything like that and you want to be able to reuse some of the leather and upcycle it, an apron's a good project to do with those. We also have some upholstery leathers in stock at the Identity store. Mostly I would probably recommend the calf leather, which is this soft, tough leather, which has a suede reverse. So there's plenty of that, and it's a really economical, good price on the website. We also have natural veg tan if you wanted to make it out of that, if you needed something thicker and stronger, particularly if you're doing something like blacksmithing, you'd want to make really thick veg tan leather. So some of the leather choices that you're going to make and the design choices you're going to make will depend on your end purpose. So just as an example, this is an apron we did for, it's actually not got any ties, it would just sit over on your lap, and this is for spoon carving in bushcraft. So it's got this really sort of big kind of heavy piece of veg tan that's been attached onto the leather, and it's got a curve just here, so it will sit down over the leg. So as you're working on your whittling or your carving with your wood, you're protected, your leg is protected from going down. So that's kind of like a napping, flint napping, or wood carving idea. So mixing the two leathers together can work really well as well. So taking a really thick part of the veg tan for any areas that need a lot more protection. As I say, for blacksmithing you'd want a really thick veg tan. So if you need any advice on that, do message us. The oil tan calf makes a good, that's a slightly firmer one, but again it makes a good, more protective apron. So the leathers will just depend on use, how flexible you want it, and you can mix the two leathers. So you might also want to mix, say for example, a lighter weight belt strap blank, which would give you your straps, which you could then attach with a buckle, and they would give you some reinforcement for certain areas. So that's your leathers and your style choices. So making a pattern up. I like to make my patterns in newspaper. So I tend to start with the piece of newspaper. This is just from our local paper. So if you have a look at this size, this is a really good size generally for a starting point for the bottom part of the apron. In fact, this is the pattern I pretty much used as this shape for my half apron. Now obviously if you're taller and bigger than me, you might want to add on a couple of, maybe put two sheets together with some masking tape, so you've got a bigger place to start from. But working out where you want it, work out where you want the length to be. I tend to work them to be just above the knee. If you have anything coming below the knee and you're bending down a lot or kneeling, it can get in the way a little bit. So working to general principle just above the knee, but again it will depend on what you're aiming to do with it. So this will give me my oblong base. Then taking a piece, turning it the other way, and I'm going to position this with the fold halfway, make sure it's in the right kind of halfway along, and just using my tape I'm just going to tape that in place there, and that's going to give me my equivalent of my bib section. Now what I want to do is to work out where it's going to sit comfortably for me on the neckline here. So you've got your kind of collarbone here, and then coming out generally just about there is a good comfortable place for any adjustments and any bits of where the apron sits. So if I sort of position it sort of centre on myself and then just work out where it wants, and I'm just going to put a little squeeze in there, and if I fold that down, what I'm going to do is do one side now from this point, and then I'll fold it over in half and get everything to make sure it's all symmetrical. So I've got my one half over, but as you can see there, it's not a very attractive line where it meets. So what I want to do is put a curve in there. So the way I'm going to do that is to get a piece of newspaper. I'm going to cut a piece. Or tear it. And I'm going to put that down underneath that gap there. So I'm just going to lay it down, and I can take that in position, and then with a marker pen, I'll try and do one that will show up on the camera. I'm going to work out just taking a gentle curve to the edge of that corner. Okay, and just before it moves too far anywhere, I'm going to just tape that down. And into place. And then I'm going to cut it, and I'm going to cut about 2 centimetres above that line. And just get that paper out of the way. So I now got my line, my curved line stitched in. So taking the scissors, just create a series of slots up to your curved line. And the reason for doing this is just going to give us our fold back, and as we fold that back, we're going to create a slightly firmer edge on the pattern for the curve. And once we've taped that down, we've then got a nice line for transferring that curve over onto the leather when we come to transfer it over. So if I tape those bits down in place on that end, okay, so that gives me, if I hold that up, and before I go any further as well, I'm just going to keep going back and checking that the shape is working for me there. So that's giving a nice kind of shape for going round, there's nothing to get in the way, so I'm happy with that. But using the newspaper is great for this because you can go back, add bits of paper, cut bits away until you get it exactly how you want. Now taking my centre line of the newspaper, which is generally easy to find because of the folds, I'm going to fold it over in half, and then again going back to my marker pen, I'm just going to draw my line of where that is going to fold, and I need to put in another piece of paper for that curve line as well for the other side. So I'll stick that down there, just attach that on with a couple of bits of masking tape. You can go back and add the masking tape once you've got kind of to make it all secure, so it's just while I'm marking out. So again, continuing that curve line down with the marker pen to my edge, which is there. And again, I want to cut out that away so I can fold over. So I'm going to cut that a bit bigger and cut my notches to fold over for this side. And tape those down. Now this, when I open this back up, is going to give me my nice symmetrical shape. So here's one I did earlier, and you can start to see it's taking shape. And from here you can also use your marker pen to draw on where you're going to attach your straps, where you're going to put your pockets and your placement, so you can work out where you want things to go. But this will give you your base template that you can use. It will fit for you. If you need to scale it up or down, you can obviously use that as your starting point, and it can be something that you then if you masking tape around your edges on it to prevent it tearing, it's something you can go back to and use and reuse to make. When you are making your apron, it is worth considering what you'll be wearing. So if for example you're making an apron that you're going to be wearing outdoors for gardening or in the woods, you may want to be thinking about wearing it over a big jumper or even a coat. So having something that will kind of work in that situation is important as well. But you can allow for that with the adjustments that you put on. So making the strap and the waistband straps adjustable can be a really good thing to do. You can use, so for example this one here on the neckline has got two different poppers so that you can adjust that across the neckline. So you could do press studs, you could use a Sam Brown and create different holes, or a buckle. What I do quite like to do, particularly on this top neckline, is to use 2 Ds. Now the reason for that is that you can then pull that tight. So whenever you've got like a buckle or a Sam Brown or the press studs, you've got gaps in between and those become your fixed places. Whereas when you've got the 2D method, you can tighten it up to exactly where you need it to. So if you're wearing a big jumper one day, a t-shirt the next, you can actually be a bit more precise with it. So to put in your 2 Sam Browns, all I've done is folded the leather over and slotted the two together, right together, and riveted close up to the base of those two. And then it just gives you, if I thread this back through again, so I've got my two rings here. So you would then put your leather strip through both of them and come down through the other one, and this gives you the tail to pull tight and get it where you want to. So you loosen it off, you can adjust it and pull it, and then as it lies tight on you, it pulls itself together and stays secure. So using 2Ds in that way can be a really good method to give you a really good adjustment. So that's just another method to think about. When you've worked your pattern out, you might be thinking about how you're going to work this onto your leather. Aprons take up quite a lot of leather, so you can see the patterns here that there's quite a large piece, and this is based on my size. So your apron may end up bigger, particularly if you're looking for a lot more protection and you're taking it down further and around the sides. So what you can do is then put seams in. So if I had a piece of leather and my leather was a different size to this and I couldn't quite get this out, or I had it in 2 or 3 pieces, I would draw this out again and then cut my template out to make smaller sections. And on those I would allow some seam allowance. So the easiest way to do it is to put some tape down the side, making sure you've got at least 1 centimetre down over the edge to allow for that extra overlap, and draw your line in for where the finished line should be. So you could then, for example, put in a waist line here and have that could be 2 sections of leather, or you could even do 3 with a centre join going down the centre here and going across here, or down the centre of the whole half, if that makes, it depends what your leather size is. So it is something that you can do, and you'll see on the other some of our other videos there's a bit about joining leathers, so that might be useful to you. Apron leathers, depending again on the leather that you've used, they can be sewn by hand or by machine. So this one here has been done on a machine. It's quite a heavy leather, and it's been done on an industrial machine for stitching, but you can equally do that by hand. If you're using a lighter leather on a domestic machine, again there's a video with tips on about setting up your machine, and you will need a leather needle. But generally, I mean, most of mine I've sewn up by hand, and particularly where you've got bulky seams. If you are machine sewing, sometimes it's worth just getting to that point where before the bulky seams, if you're putting 3 bits together and you've got those 3 seams joining, you can trim a bit of the leather away to make it lie flatter. But I would at that point do that section by hand, so using a stitch awl to go through, make some new holes, and then hand stitch that bit so that you don't end up taking too much bulk through the machine. So that's how to design and make your leather. Finishing it will depend on, again, what your use is. If you're using something for catering or bar staff work, you might want to put a finish like the Perma Protect on, which is antiviral. If you're using it for outdoors, you might want to use something like Duck's Wax, which gives a waterproofing. But an apron, the whole point of it is that it's protection, and it's using you to sort of keep the muck off you. So it just is what it is, and just use them. Yeah, they're really great. I use mine all the time, and I've made them as gifts for people. So happy apron making, and let me know maybe what you make and how it looks. Thank you so much for watching.